What if everything you've been told about never giving up is actually keeping you trapped? What if the very act of holding on is the prison you've built for yourself? Today, we're exploring one of Friedrich Nietzsche's most radical ideas, that sometimes giving up might be the most courageous thing you can do. Picture this. You're clinging to a relationship that died years ago, desperately trying to revive something that's already decomposing. You're staying in a job that crushes your soul because quitters never win. You're pursuing a dream that was never really yours, just something you thought you should want. Sound familiar? You're not alone in this struggle, and you're about to discover why the German philosopher who declared God is dead might hold the key to your liberation. Nietzsche had a revolutionary insight that goes against everything our culture teaches us. He realized that most of what we call persistence is actually a form of cowardice. We hold on to things not because they serve us, but because letting go requires us to face the terrifying void of uncertainty. We cling to familiar suffering because it feels safer than the unknown possibilities that await us on the other side of surrender. But here's where Nietzsche's philosophy becomes truly dangerous and liberating. He didn't just advocate for giving up randomly. He talked about what he called amor fati, love of fate. This means embracing everything that happens to you, including the endings, the failures, the moments when you have to let go of who you thought you were supposed to be. Think about the last time you finally gave up on something that wasn't working. Maybe it was a toxic friendship, a career path that felt wrong, or a version of yourself that you'd outgrown. What happened next? Did the world end? Or did you discover a freedom you didn't know existed? Did new possibilities emerge from the ashes of what you released? Nietzsche understood something profound about human nature. We're meaning-making machines. We create stories about why we must hold on, why we can't let go, why giving up equals failure. But these stories often become the very chains that bind us. The narrative that real men don't quit might be preventing you from walking away from something that's slowly killing you. The belief that love means never giving up might be keeping you in a relationship that's become a beautiful prison. Here's what's truly mind-blowing about Nietzsche's approach. He saw giving up not as weakness, but as a form of creative destruction. Just as a forest fire clears the undergrowth to make room for new growth, sometimes we need to burn down the structures of our lives that no longer serve us. This isn't nihilism. It's the ultimate act of self-creation. The philosopher who gave us the concept of the Übermensch, the overman who creates his own values, understood that becoming who you're meant to be often requires destroying who you've been. It requires the courage to disappoint others, to abandon sunk costs, to walk away from investments that will never pay off. But here's the catch, and this is crucial. Not all giving up is created equal. There's a difference between giving up from weakness and giving up from strength. There's a difference between quitting because you're afraid and quitting because you're wise enough to recognize when something has run its course. In the next part, we're going to explore exactly how to tell the difference and why Nietzsche believed that the ability to let go is actually the foundation of all genuine power. The examples I'm about to share will completely change how you think about persistence, success, and what it really means to be free. Now that you understand the paradox of letting go, let me show you exactly how to distinguish between cowardly quitting and what Nietzsche called noble renunciation. The kind of giving up that actually sets you free and creates space for something magnificent to emerge. Nietzsche wasn't advocating for becoming a quitter. He was advocating for becoming what he called a free spirit. Someone who has the courage to examine their attachments and release the ones that no longer serve their highest evolution. This requires a level of brutal honesty that most people never develop, because it's easier to stay busy than to face the truth about what's actually working in your life. Here's the key distinction. Weak giving up comes from fear, exhaustion, or external pressure. Strong giving up comes from clarity, wisdom, and alignment with your authentic values. When you quit your job because you're afraid of the challenge, that's weakness. When you quit your job because you've realized it's fundamentally misaligned with who you're becoming, that's strength. The action looks the same from the outside, but the internal motivation is completely different. Let me give you a concrete example. Steve Jobs was famously fired from Apple, the company he co-founded. Most people would have seen this as a devastating failure, a reason to give up on their vision entirely. But Jobs later said it was the best thing that ever happened to him because it freed him from the weight of success and allowed him to enter one of the most creative periods of his life. He founded Next and Pixar during this time, innovations that wouldn't have been possible if he'd clung to his original position at Apple. This is what Nietzsche meant by amor fati, loving your fate, including the parts that force you to let go. Jobs didn't just accept being fired. He embraced it as a necessary destruction that cleared the path for his next evolution. He understood intuitively what Nietzsche taught philosophically, that sometimes what looks like an ending is actually a beginning in disguise. But here's where most people get this wrong. They think Nietzsche was promoting nihilism, the belief that nothing matters, so why try at all? That's a complete misunderstanding of his philosophy. Nietzsche was actually promoting the opposite, the idea that because we create our own meaning, we have the responsibility to create it wisely. This means being ruthlessly selective about what deserves our energy and what needs to be released. Think about your own life right now. What are you holding on to out of habit rather than choice? What relationships are you maintaining because you've invested time in them, not because they're actually nourishing you? What goals are you pursuing because you think you should, not because they align with who you're becoming? What version of yourself are you clinging to because change feels too scary to contemplate? Nietzsche introduced the concept of eternal recurrence, the idea that you should live as if you had to repeat your exact life infinite times. Would you choose to repeat the patterns you're currently stuck in? Would you choose to repeat the relationships that drain you? Would you choose to repeat the work that feels meaningless? If the answer is no, then you already know what needs to be released. The philosopher understood that most people live what he called slave morality, following rules and expectations created by others rather than creating their own values. Slave morality tells you to never give up, to always push through, to persist no matter what. Master morality, the morality of the free spirit, tells you to evaluate each situation independently and make choices based on your own authentic assessment of what serves your highest good. This doesn't mean becoming selfish or irresponsible. It means becoming responsible, able to respond to life from a place of conscious choice rather than unconscious conditioning. It means developing what Nietzsche called intellectual probity, the courage to think your own thoughts and feel your own feelings, even when they contradict what everyone else expects from you. Here's a powerful exercise. Make a list of everything in your life that you're currently holding on to. Your relationships, your commitments, your goals, your beliefs about yourself. Now ask yourself, if I were starting fresh today, would I choose this? Be honest. The things you wouldn't choose are the things that are ready to be released. But here's the crucial part, and this is where we're going next. Knowing what to let go of is only half the battle. The other half is understanding how to let go in a way that actually creates freedom rather than just creating a different kind of prison. In Part 3, I'm going to show you Nietzsche's specific techniques for what he called self-overcoming, the art of becoming who you really are by destroying who you think you should be. Ready for Part 3? Here's where Nietzsche's philosophy becomes truly transformative, and where most people completely miss the point. He didn't just want you to give up randomly. He wanted you to master what he called self-overcoming, the deliberate process of shedding everything that keeps you small, so you can become everything you're capable of being. The German word Nietzsche used was Selbstüberwindung, literally self-overcoming or self-conquering. But this isn't about conquering others or dominating your environment. It's about conquering the parts of yourself that have been conquered by others. The beliefs, expectations, and limitations that were imposed on you before you were old enough to choose them for yourself. Think about it this way. You came into this world as pure potential, but over the years, you've accumulated layers of conditioning. Your parents told you what success should look like. Society told you what relationships should be. Your culture told you what dreams were realistic. Your past failures told you what you weren't capable of. All of these voices created a prison of shoulds and shouldn'ts that now masquerades as your identity. Nietzsche saw through this illusion completely. He understood that what most people call themselves is actually a collection of other people's expectations and society's programming. The real you, what he called your authentic self, is buried underneath all of this conditioning, and the only way to reach it is through what he called the great letting go. But here's the sophisticated part of Nietzsche's approach. He didn't advocate for letting go of everything at once. That would be chaos, not freedom. Instead, he promoted what I call strategic deconstruction, the careful, deliberate process of examining each element of your life and consciously choosing what to keep and what to release. Let me give you a practical example. Sarah is a successful lawyer who's been practicing for 15 years. She makes good money, has social status, and her parents are proud. But she wakes up every morning with a sense of dread. She's been holding on to this career not because it fulfills her, but because letting go would mean admitting that 15 years of her life were wasted. Nietzsche would say that this thinking is exactly what keeps her trapped. The sunk cost fallacy. The idea that you must continue something because you've already invested in it is one of the most powerful forms of psychological imprisonment. Nietzsche understood that truly free people are willing to waste their past investments if those investments are preventing them from creating their future. He called this the courage of the wasteful, the willingness to abandon what you've built if it's not serving who you're becoming. But here's where it gets really interesting. Nietzsche didn't see this letting go as loss. He saw it as creative destruction. Just as an artist must destroy their rough draft to create their masterpiece, you must be willing to destroy your current life to create your authentic life. This isn't nihilism. It's the ultimate act of creation. The philosopher introduced the concept of eternal return, not just as a thought experiment, but as a practical tool for decision-making. Before you commit to anything, a relationship, a career, a goal, a belief about yourself, ask, would I choose this if I had to live it forever? If the answer is no, then you're living someone else's life, not your own. Here's another crucial insight. Nietzsche understood that most people are afraid to let go because they confuse their attachments with their identity. They think, if I'm not a lawyer, who am I? If I'm not in this relationship, who am I? If I'm not pursuing this goal, who am I? But Nietzsche would say that this question reveals the problem. You're not your roles, your relationships, or your goals. You're the consciousness that chooses them. This is what he meant by becoming an Übermensch. Not a superior person in the sense of being better than others, but a person who has overcome the need to define themselves through external attachments. The Übermensch creates their own values instead of inheriting them. They choose their own meaning instead of accepting what they're told. They design their own life instead of living the life that's expected of them. The practical application of this philosophy is what Nietzsche called the revaluation of all values. This means taking everything you currently believe about success, love, happiness, and meaning, and asking, did I choose this belief, or was it chosen for me? Does this belief serve who I'm becoming, or does it serve who I used to be? Does this belief expand my possibilities, or does it limit them? Most people never do this work because it's terrifying. It means admitting that much of what you've been holding on to might need to be released. It means facing the possibility that you've been living someone else's dream instead of your own. It means accepting that becoming who you really are might disappoint people who preferred who you used to be. But here's the payoff, and this is what we're exploring in our final part. Once you master the art of strategic letting go, you don't just become free from your limitations. You become free to create something entirely new. You become what Nietzsche called a free spirit, someone who dances on the edge of possibility instead of hiding in the safety of the familiar. In Part 4, I'm going to show you exactly how to implement this philosophy in your daily life, and why the courage to give up might be the only thing standing between you and the life you actually want to live. Ready for the final transformation? Now comes the moment of truth. How to actually implement Nietzsche's philosophy of strategic surrender in your real life. But I need to warn you, what I'm about to share will challenge everything you think you know about success, relationships, and what it means to live authentically. This isn't just theory anymore. This is the practical roadmap to becoming what Nietzsche called a free spirit. The first step in mastering the art of letting go is what Nietzsche called intellectual honesty. The courage to see your life exactly as it is, not as you wish it were, or as others expect it to be. This means conducting what I call the great inventory, a ruthless assessment of every major element in your life. Your career, your relationships, your goals, your beliefs, your habits, your environment. For each item, ask yourself 3 questions. Does this energize me or drain me? Does this align with my authentic values or someone else's expectations? Would I choose this if I were starting fresh today? Be prepared for some uncomfortable revelations. You might discover that the career you've spent years building actually makes you miserable. You might realize that relationships you've maintained out of loyalty are actually toxic. You might find that goals you've been pursuing aren't even your own. They're what your parents wanted for you, or what society told you to want, or what you thought would make you worthy of love. Here's where most people get stuck. They identify what needs to be released, but they don't know how to actually let go. Nietzsche understood that letting go isn't just a mental decision. It's a creative act that requires what he called the will to power. Not power over others, but power over your own life. The power to choose your own values, create your own meaning, and design your own existence. The second step is what I call the art of sacred destruction. This is where you begin systematically dismantling the structures in your life that no longer serve you. But here's the crucial part. You don't just tear things down randomly. You tear them down consciously, with intention, with what Nietzsche called amor fati, love of fate. You embrace the destruction as necessary for your evolution. Let me give you a concrete example. Marcus had been in a relationship for 8 years that had slowly become more like a comfortable prison than a passionate partnership. They rarely fought, but they also rarely felt alive together. Using Nietzsche's approach, Marcus didn't just end the relationship out of frustration or anger. He approached it as an act of love. Love for himself, love for his partner, and love for the possibility of what they could both become if they were free to grow separately. The conversation was difficult, but it came from a place of clarity rather than reactivity. Marcus explained that he was choosing to let go not because he didn't care, but because he cared too much to let them both settle for a life that was less than what they deserved. This is what Nietzsche meant by noble renunciation, letting go from a place of strength rather than weakness. The third step is what Nietzsche called self-creation, the process of consciously designing who you want to become now that you've released who you used to be. This isn't about finding yourself. Nietzsche believed that the self isn't found, it's created. You don't discover your purpose, you invent it. You don't uncover your values, you choose them. This is where the real work begins. Once you've cleared the space by letting go of what doesn't serve you, you have to fill that space with conscious choices rather than unconscious patterns. You have to become what Nietzsche called a philosopher with a hammer, someone who tests every belief, every assumption, every inherited value to see if it rings true for who you're becoming. Here's a practical exercise that embodies Nietzsche's philosophy. Write your own personal manifesto. Not what you think you should believe, but what you actually believe. Not what would make others proud, but what would make you feel most alive. Not what's safe or reasonable, but what's authentic and energizing. This document becomes your North Star, the standard against which you measure every decision. But here's the most important part of Nietzsche's teaching. Becoming a free spirit isn't a destination. It's a way of being. It's the ongoing practice of questioning your attachments, releasing what no longer serves you, and consciously creating what does. It's the courage to disappoint others in service of your authentic self. It's the wisdom to know that every ending is also a beginning. The philosopher who declared God is dead wasn't promoting atheism. He was promoting the ultimate responsibility. If there's no external authority dictating how you should live, then you become the author of your own existence. This is both terrifying and liberating. Terrifying because you can't blame anyone else for your choices. Liberating because you're free to make choices that actually serve your highest evolution. The final truth Nietzsche discovered is this: the people who change the world aren't the ones who never give up on anything. They're the ones who know what to give up and when to give up. They're the ones who can let go of good to make room for great. They're the ones who understand that sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is walk away from everything you've built, to become everything you're capable of being. The question isn't whether you should give up. The question is what you should give up. What in your life is ready to be released? What version of yourself is ready to die so that your authentic self can finally be born? Your freedom is waiting on the other side of your courage to let go. The choice is yours. The time is now.